One Halloween in the Bronx, teenagers threw eggs at a car. The eggs probably cost the teens a few dollars, but for Carl Jackson, those eggs cost him his life. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to GrayDays TV, and today I'm going to be talking about the death of a man named Carl Jackson. Carl was described as a quiet young man, and he was the son of a nurse and a postal worker. And he usually avoided going out on Halloween, not because he was too busy. He was a data entry clerk at Morgan Stanley, but because he thought it was too dangerous. The year was 1998. Carl Jackson, who had recently turned 21, had taken his 29-year-old girlfriend, Darlene, and her 9-year-old son, Clyde, to a children's party near Gun Hill Road earlier that evening. And they were taking Clyde home to a babysitter to go to another party when an egg hit their car. Now, there are two slightly different tellings of what happened next. The first is that after the teenager's egg hit Carl Jackson's car, he got out and there was an argument. And at some point later, Carl Jackson sat back down in the passenger seat, and that is when one of the teenagers pulled out a gun and shot him in the temple, killing him. But in the second telling of events, after Carl Jackson gets into that confrontation, he gets back into his car and he leaves. And that is when one of the teenagers gets into one of their cars. They follow him, and then sometime later they get out of the car and shoot him then. I think it took us 2 years to even talk about it, said Gloria Jackson, Carl Jackson's mother. We were just devastated. We never thought that anyone from our family would be murdered, especially on a holiday for something stupid. So now every Halloween on the anniversary of Carl Jackson's death, instead of celebrating, his family gathers at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx to honor their son. So the teenager who killed Carl Jackson, Curtis Stirling, was 17 when he committed this crime, and he is now serving 20 years at a state prison in Ulster County. And every Halloween, Curtis Stirling receives a card from Carl Jackson's mother that reads, "I'm glad you're still there." So when I first heard about this, I thought that this was something that was completely random and that there was no way this happens somewhat often, but after looking into it more, it happens more than I actually thought it did. Apparently, Halloween eggings has a violent legacy in New York City. In fact, since 1984, at least 24 people have been killed or wounded in stabbings, shootings, or accidents that have been caused by eggs being thrown near Halloween. And all 24 cases played out in roughly the same way. A group of teenagers throws eggs at a pedestrian or house or car. Then the person who got hit by those eggs confronts those teenagers, and then violence erupts. And most of the victims were teenagers or young men. And although the New York police departments don't actually compile statistics on how often this happens, the tally of 24 victims comes from reviews of articles in the New York Times, the Daily News, the New York Post, and Newsday. And although many have surmised that the teenagers get caught up in the anonymity of wearing masks and costumes and use them as an excuse to cause trouble, no one really knows why these seemingly innocent teenage pranks cause so much violence in New York City. And I do want to note that Halloween eggings have caused attacks in other parts of the country, but only in New York has this practice led to the death or wounding of 24 people. Some, like Carl Jackson, who decided to confront the egg throwers, have been murdered. Some who have been hit with eggs ended up chasing the culprit down and killing them. And some who have thrown eggs died trying to get away from the people chasing them afterwards. And for police officers in the 104th Precinct in Queens, eggings are serious business. And they actually ask merchants not to sell shaving cream or eggs to minors in the weeks leading up to Halloween. And they also distribute no egg posters to stores as part of a campaign started by the Juniper Park Civic Association. So now I'm going to run through some of the other cases where egging has led to death in New York. 2 days before Halloween in 1994, a 12-year-old who was having an egg fight with a couple of his friends was killed by two men who were passing by who accidentally got hit by those eggs. They basically got angry, and I guess he was the first one they caught, and they killed him. And later that night, a 29-year-old who was carrying a new tricycle he had bought for his son was hit by an egg on his way home in Bed-Stuy. In retaliation, he threw a bottle in the general direction of the two teenage attackers who threw eggs at him, and in return, they went home and came back with a shotgun and killed him. In 1996, a 10-year-old Brooklyn boy was struck in the neck by a stray bullet after an egg fight on Halloween. On October 29th of 2005, Joseph Pedro was shot and killed in the Bronx after he had chased down a group of teenagers who threw eggs at his minivan. One of those he chased, Jeffrey Ivey, who was 15 at the time, never admitted that he threw an egg that hit the minivan, even though witnesses say that he did. Ended up pleading guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 5 years to life in prison. Whether he threw it or not, the deceased thought he did, said Mr. Ivey's lawyer, Robert M. Mall. What may start off as a prank does not always end how people may think. And in this case, it led to tragic results for both the deceased and Jeffrey Ivey. And that's where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to let me know what you guys think about this. It would be easy to say in most, if not all of these cases, that the killers in those situations overreacted to a situation that really didn't call for it. But in the case of the two grown men who ended up killing the 12-year-old, it's hard to really understand how someone could become that angry and violent towards a child. And it's extremely sad to think that so many people have lost their lives due to something so simple. So please remember to stay safe this Halloween. And like always, I hope you guys continue to have a great day, great week, great month, great year. And I will catch you next video.